Hi there, I'm Cantor Paula Baruch, and I'm going to help you through Level 1 Time to Read Hebrew. In these few slides, you will see 5 sounds or words on each page, and I will guide you through how to read them. This will help you improve any gaps that you may have in your Hebrew reading learning so far. Let's begin. Lessons 1 to 5 from page 82 of Time to Read Hebrew by Orna Lechner. We always read Hebrew from right to left, so starting in the top right hand of these Hebrew words, let us look at the first sound. We have a letter bet with an ah underneath it. We say simply ba, ba. The second sound, we have a dalet over the tiny T vowel, which makes also the sound ah. The two vowels, the first one and the second one, both the same sound, ah. So we say da. The third, in the top row, we have an aleph. Aleph is a silent letter. It doesn't make any sound on its own. It does have a vowel underneath it, however, the single dot. The single dot alone makes the sound E. So, since aleph has no sound of its own, the sound is simply E. The top line, therefore, reads as follows. Ba, da, E. The second line, we have the letter tzadik. Tzadik is a unique letter, a sound that we don't have a letter for in English. It's like putting a T and an S or a T and a Z together, or like the two Zs in a row in the word pizza. Tza is the sound that tzadik makes. With the vowel E or the single dot underneath it, the sound is tzi, tzi. Lastly, we have another aleph with a very peculiar looking vowel underneath it. It's a combination vowel. We have the single line, which we know makes the sound ah, and we have a shva, the two dots that are vertical. The two vertical dots put together with any other vowel simply makes the sound a little shorter, a little less emphasis. So instead of saying ah, you would give it less emphasis, like ah. So reading the second line together, we would say tzi, ah. Let's move on. On our next slide, we also have 5 sounds. Let's start at the top right. We see the letter tav, making a T sound. It has the ah vowel underneath it, and following that letter, attached to that same word, we have a shin with a vowel ah underneath it. We will read this ta-sha, ta-sha. The second word also starts with the sound ta, but the next letter, instead of tav, after tav rather, is gimel with an ah underneath it. We would read that ta-ga, ta-ga. The final sound in the first row starts with the letter mem with an ah, followed by bet with an ah. So we would read that ma-ba, ma-ba. The first line, read, would sound like this. Ta-sha, ta-ga, ma-ba. Let's look at the second line. We have a mem with an ah underneath it, followed by an aleph. Remember, aleph doesn't make any sound unless there's a vowel attached to it, and there isn't one here. So we would simply say ma. The final sound is a bet with an E vowel underneath it, the single dot, followed by a yud. Since yud kind of is like a Y in English, and a Y at the end of a word is kind of like saying E, like fairy, berry. Here we have bet that already has an E sound under it, and the yud just kind of emphasizes that sound. It doesn't change it. So it simply says be, be. Reading this whole line, you would read ma, be. Let's move on. Looking at our top right, we have a shin again. The shin kind of looks like kind of a W, a 3-pronged letter, and it has a dot on it that gives it the SH or the sh sound when the dot at the top is on the right-hand side. We're going to see later on the same letter with the dot on the left-hand side. When that happens, the sound will change to a simple S or S sound. Here the dot is on the right, so we're sticking with sh, and we have ah underneath. The second sound in that first word is a bet with an ah. So this would read Shabbat, Shabbat. That's on its way to being the word Shabbat, isn't it? If you put a tav on the end. Second word, we have Gimel and Daled with ah as the vowels underneath. We will read this Gada, Gada. The last word or syllable in this first line has a sha at the beginning, followed by an aleph, which does not change anything. So that sound remains sha. Reading the top line all together, we will read Shabbat, Gada, Shah. The second line, we have a letter. The first time we're seeing this letter in this sequence of lessons, the letter hey. It's like an H sound in English. Here it has an ah underneath it, and it has a shin with no vowel sound after it. So that's going to be the closing sound in the syllable. So we would read Hosh, Hosh. Then we have the last word here is a nun with an ah, a mem with an ah sound, and a hey at the end with no vowel sound. Since hey is an H, we can think of some words in English that end with H and you don't really hear that the H is there. I'm thinking of like the name Rebecca with a K-A-H in the end. You don't hear Rebecca at the end, it's simply Rebecca. This is like this word. The H is kind of silent at the end. The hey will be silent because it's at the end. And it has no vowel associated with it. So we would read this Nama, Nama. Let's move on. Starting again in the top right-hand corner, we see the word bot, bot. I want to stop here for a moment because we already know the ba sound very well. The final sound in this syllable, the tav, is making a T sound. Notice we saw a tav before in the first slide and it had a dot in it. Long time ago, a tav with a dot in it made the T sound, and a tav without a dot in it made an S sound. We don't distinguish those different sounds anymore. We make them both a T sound in modern Hebrew. And when we read Hebrew prayers, we do. Only in older Ashkenazic pronunciation do you still hear the S sound for a tav without the dot. And that is why, my friends, when you hear people say good Shabbat or good Shabbos, because Shabbat is spelled shin, bet, tav without a dot, you'll hear some people say it as a T and some people say it as an S. Shabbat, Shabbos. So here we have bat as our first syllable. The second on the top line is dash. That's because that's a dalet and ending with the shin sound. Then we have meeg, meeg. The mem with the single dot, me, and the g sound of the gimel at the end. In the next line, the second line, first word, maga, maga. Ooh, I think there's a martial art, Israeli martial art. Krav Maga, it's called. So that's how you would spell maga. Look at that big word at the end. That's exciting. We have our aleph with a short ah underneath. And then we have gimel, gi, and the yud just helps the E sound. And then we have da with a silent H sound at the end. So we would read that agida, agida. Notice how quick the ah part is. Let's move on. There's our tav with a dot in it. No matter though, if tav has a dot or without a dot, we're going to pronounce it with a T sound. So the first syllable is tosh. The second syllable with the bet and the gimel and an ah under the bet would be bog. The final syllable in the first line with the aleph with the E underneath it, ending with a D, dalet sound, eid, eid. Moving on to the second line, we start with a hey, and now hey is at the beginning and it has a vowel sound. So it's going to make a sound. Ha, and then we have a tzadik with an ah, and a final dalet. Hatzad, hatzad. The next and final word, little tiny word in this slide, starts with a ha, and then yud has a ah underneath it, so we say like a Y sound, ya. So this word would be hayya, because the hey at the end is silent, hayya. It's like you just karate chopped a board, hayya. Moving on. Here we have the first sound, shab, shab. The second word, dashab. The third word, imat. Second line, first word, itzat. And the last one, nahag. I hope you read those before I said them. Shows that you're learning and trying your voice. I'm going to leave a little more time for that as we move on to this next slide. So here we have shin tav tav and the vowels ah with a T ending. You read it first. Shatat, shatat. Next word. Gadash, gadash. The third word. Damish, damish. Next line. Shaha, shaha. Last word. Tsiya, tsiya. Let's move on. First word. Tashab. Second word. Dabat. Third word. Ga'at. Fourth word. Tatsig. Last word. Yamish. Let's read some more. First word. Shatash. Second word. Shagad. Third word. Adib. Fourth word. Shia. Last word. Dinat. This is the last slide in this first set, this level 1. So read before me, and then you can repeat after me too. It gives you 2 shots. So read that first word for me. Babat. Second word. Tabag. Third word. Tamash. Fourth word. Gahash. Last word. Nitsa. Very good. Next time we'll move on to something a little bit more challenging. Well done.